Ben and Theo, 5-year-old twins, knelt on the rug beside their nanny, Maya Williams. Her tone was gentle, her eyes warm. "We can talk to your mom any time," she said softly. "Even if she's in heaven, she'll still hear you." But before the boys could whisper another word, a door slammed open. "Are you teaching my sons to pray?" Alexander Reed's voice cracked through the hallway like thunder. The 6'2" billionaire filled the doorway, fury pouring off him. The twins froze. Maya stood, trembling. "Mr. Reed, they were just what? Turning my home into a church?" He hurled a pile of unopened mail onto the floor. A book slid across the rug and hit her shin. She flinched. "They miss their mother," she whispered. "It helps them feel close to her." Alexander's voice sharpened. "You don't fill my sons' heads with fantasies about spirits and heavens. I don't raise them on fairy tales." Ben's small voice cracked. "Daddy, she just said we can talk to Mom." Theo added timidly, "Not like church stuff." "Just so it doesn't hurt so much." Maya's throat tightened. "I didn't mean disrespect." "You broke my rule," Alexander barked. "You're done. Pack your things. Please, Mr. Reed." "Enough." The boys began to cry, clutching Maya's skirt until Alexander's shout sent them running down the hall. She stood alone in silence. Her hands shook as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Alexander didn't look back. "You'll be gone by morning." That night she sat on the boy's bed, tears falling onto her lap. In the quiet, she whispered one final prayer, not for herself, but for the family she'd grown to love. Morning came pale and cold. Before leaving, Maya left a small box on the kitchen counter. Inside were 2 drawings. One showed Maya standing under a starry sky with the twins, a smiling woman watching from the clouds. The other showed bedtime, Maya reading while the boys smiled under a crescent moon. Beneath them, a note. "Mr. Reed, I'm sorry. I wasn't teaching religion, only comfort. Grief is too heavy for small hearts. I wanted to give them something soft to hold on to." When Alexander found the box, he read the note once, then shoved it shut. Logic, not sentiment. That was how he'd always survived. But over the next days, something shifted. The house grew quiet. The laughter stopped. The twins obeyed, but their eyes dulled. He'd built a mansion of marble and silence, and now his children were learning to live inside it. He tried to ignore it, muttering to himself that Maya had made them soft. Until one night, as thunder rumbled outside, he caught sight of their empty playroom, the crayons untouched, their dinosaur books closed. For the first time, Alexander felt something he couldn't reason away: loneliness. 3 days later, he cancelled every meeting. He made pancakes, burned them. The boys laughed. He read from their favorite storybook, tripping over the words. They laughed harder. He sat with them during cartoons and learned their jokes. Slowly, the house exhaled. One evening, he found them whispering near the window. "Who are you talking to?" "Mommy," Theo said. "Miss Maya said we can talk with love, even if she can't hear with ears." Alexander froze. "You believe that?" Ben nodded. "When we do, it doesn't hurt so much." He didn't argue. His throat tightened. "It doesn't hurt so much," he whispered back. And for the first time in months, the man who didn't believe in faith found peace, not in proof, but in his children's calm. That night, Theo climbed into his lap. "Daddy, can you pray with us?" "Me?" Alexander blinked. "Just like Miss Maya." He hesitated, then knelt between their beds, awkwardly, unsure what to say. The boys began first. "Miss you." "Love you, thank you." Silence. Then Alexander whispered, voice cracking, "I miss her too." Every day. There was no miracle, just stillness and something inside him quietly healing. Before leaving the room, Theo tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can you ask Miss Maya to come back?" Ben added softly, "We'll be good. Promise." Alexander stood in the doorway, unable to answer, but he knew what he had to do. The next morning, he sat in his office, staring at his phone. His thumb hovered over her number. He exhaled, then pressed call. "Hello, this is Maya." "Maya," he said. "It's Alexander Reed." Silence. "I owe you an apology. I lost control that night. I humiliated you. I fired you for giving my sons something I didn't understand." Her voice trembled. "They miss you. They talk about you every night." He nodded. "They miss you, Maya. I do too. And they've asked me to bring you back. On your terms, no rules, no restrictions." A long pause. Finally, she said quietly, "I'll think about it." 3 days later, she arrived, suitcase in hand. Heart pounding, Alexander opened the door himself. No suit, no cold edge, just a man trying. "Maya," he said softly, "thank you for coming." From the stairs came the sound of laughter. "Miss Maya!" The twins ran, crashing into her with joy. Her laugh returned, and for the first time, the house felt alive again. When the boys ran off for cookies, Alexander spoke. "I've replayed that night 1,000 times," he admitted. "It wasn't the prayer I hated. It was the peace it gave them. I didn't understand it." Maya met his eyes. "It wasn't about religion, Mr. Reed. It was about permission to feel." He nodded slowly. "Can you forgive me?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Yes. But it's not just my forgiveness you need." That evening he knelt again, not out of faith, but out of love. And when his sons prayed, he whispered softly, "Thank you for giving me another chance." The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide windows of the Reed estate, painting the kitchen in gold. For the first time in months, breakfast felt alive, the twins giggling as Alexander tried to flip pancakes. "Are those chocolate chips?" Theo asked, peeking over the counter. "They were," Alexander said, glancing at the blackened pan. "Now they're artistic choices." Maya laughed softly from the sink. "Smells like enthusiasm," he smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." They sat together at the table, father, sons, and the woman who'd somehow sewn the seams of their hearts back together. Alexander had once eaten breakfast alone, behind boardroom emails and conference calls. Now he was listening to knock-knock jokes between sips of coffee. "Daddy," Ben said between giggles, "why did the pancake go to therapy?" "Why?" "Because it felt flat." Maya laughed first, and Alexander joined in, shaking his head. "I'm surrounded by comedians." Later, after the laughter faded and the boys ran outside to play, Alexander lingered at the table. His eyes followed Maya as she cleaned up, her movements graceful, unhurried. "I don't know how long this peace will last," he said quietly. Maya looked up. "What do you mean?" "Every calm moment in my life ends with a storm. I keep waiting for something to fall apart." She dried her hands and sat across from him. "Peace isn't luck, Alexander. It's a choice. You build it, the same way you build everything else, by showing up." He studied her, her calmness unsettling and grounding at once. "I didn't realize how afraid they were of me," he admitted. "You weren't cruel," Maya said gently. "You were broken, and broken people mistake control for safety." Her words cut deep, not like accusation, but truth. Alexander nodded, his throat tight. Days passed quietly. The twins laughed more, slept better, and played longer. Alexander found himself watching them through windows. Studying their joy as though it were a language, he was finally learning to speak. Then, one morning, he said, "We're visiting Emily today." Maya looked up, surprised. "Her grave?" He nodded. "I haven't been since the funeral. It's time." The sky was grey when they arrived, the kind of still morning that carries both grief and grace. The boys held small bouquets of wildflowers. Maya walked beside them, silent support in motion. When they reached the headstone, Alexander's voice broke. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he whispered. "I thought pretending to be strong was strength." The boys knelt beside him. "Hi, Mommy," Ben said softly. "We miss you." Theo added, "We talk to you every night. We hope you hear us." Alexander's hands trembled as he brushed leaves off the marble. "I've made mistakes," he said, voice shaking. "But I'll do better. For them, For you, for me. The wind stirred gently, carrying the sound of his son's laughter through the cemetery. It didn't feel sad. It felt like release. That night, after the boys were asleep, Alexander sat on the porch beside Maya. The sky was full of stars. "I think today was the first day I let go," he said quietly. She nodded. "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room." He looked at her, eyes full. "You've given me something I didn't know I needed." Maya smiled faintly. "You gave it to yourself. I just reminded you how." For a while they sat in silence, breathing in the night. Weeks passed. The house grew softer, laughter in the mornings, warmth in the halls. Alexander found himself humming under his breath one Saturday as he walked into the kitchen. "Did you just hum?" Maya asked, amused. "I suppose I did," he said, smiling. "First time this house has heard that sound." "Then maybe it needed it," she replied. The boys bounded in, their socks sliding across the floor. "Daddy said we can go to the park." "Can we bring kites?" Theo added. "Of course," Maya said. The park was bright with sunlight, alive with families and music. Ben and Theo ran ahead, kites fluttering like laughter behind them. Alexander and Maya walked slower, the air between them easy and warm. "She used to bring them here," he said quietly. "Emily. She said the trees looked like they were crying for the world." Maya smiled. "They don't look sad to me. They look like they're holding stories." He glanced at her. "She would have liked you." They sat on a bench and watched the twins run circles. For a long time there was nothing but wind, laughter, and the sound of healing taking root. That night, after the boys were tucked in, Alexander sat with them in the reading nook. "Do you remember the beach trip with Mommy?" he asked. Ben grinned. "When she buried Theo in the sand up to his neck?" "She told me crabs were going to nibble my ears." Theo squealed. Alexander laughed. "She did. But do you remember what she said before we left?" Ben frowned, thinking. "She picked up a shell and said it holds the sea's last whisper." "That's right," Alexander said softly. "She said if we listen carefully, we can hear the ocean missing us." Silence fell, tender, not heavy. Alexander's eyes glistened. A single tear escaped. "Daddy," Ben asked gently, "are you crying?" Theo whispered, "No, he's remembering." And Alexander didn't correct him. Later he found Maya making tea in the kitchen. "You were right," he said. "About what?" "They need her stories, and so do I." She handed him a cup. "You're doing the work. That's what matters." He took the cup, hesitating. "I want to change things. No more quiet dinners. No more distance. I want them to see love, feel it." Maya looked at him carefully. "What does that look like to you?" "It looks like family nights, walks in the park, stories before bed. And you staying." She studied him. "You're not as complicated as you think." He smiled faintly. "So is that a yes?" Maya didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. A week later, Alexander announced it at breakfast. "Friday nights are family nights." Ben gasped. "Movies?" Theo cheered. "S'mores." "And Miss Maya?" Ben asked. Alexander nodded. "Of course. That first family night turned the living room into a camp. Blankets piled high, fairy lights strung across the fireplace. The boys wore mismatched pajamas. Alexander, a hoodie. "You look like a dad trying to infiltrate a sleepover," Maya teased. He grinned. "Close enough." They watched movies, ate popcorn, and for once, grief stayed quiet in the corners. Halfway through, Theo whispered, "Miss Maya, do you think Mommy can see us having fun?" Maya smiled. "If she can, she's smiling." Ben turned to his father. "Would she want us to be happy?" Alexander's voice caught. "More than anything." And that night, laughter replaced the sound of loss. After the boys slept, Alexander found Maya tidying the kitchen. "Tonight felt real," he said quietly. "For the first time in a long time," she smiled. "Real has a way of sneaking up on you." He hesitated. "Would it scare you if I said I think of you as family?" She froze slightly, then nodded. A little, because family means staying. He stepped closer. And what if I asked you to? Then I'd have to ask how you mean it, she said softly. As the nanny, or something else? Alexander didn't have the answer. Only honesty. I just know this house didn't feel like home again until you came back. Maya looked down, then up. Let's just take it one Friday night at a time. He smiled. That's enough for me. 3 weeks later, Friday nights had become sacred in the Reed household. No emails, no meetings, no excuses. Even Alexander's staff knew if it was family night, the CEO was unreachable. The boys counted down each week as if it were Christmas. Popcorn buckets, stories, laughter, and a sense of belonging filled the mansion that once echoed with grief. But beyond those walls, the world hadn't paused. Reed Technologies was preparing for a billion-dollar acquisition, and pressure mounted from every direction. Until one Saturday morning, that pressure arrived, high heels clicking across the marble. Vanessa Langford, Alexander's longtime assistant, stood in the foyer, sharp as glass. "Is Mr. Reed available?" Maya hesitated. "He's with the boys in the sunroom." Without waiting, Vanessa walked in, her perfume slicing through the air like authority. Alexander appeared moments later, holding 2 juice boxes, wearing a soft sweatshirt instead of a suit. "Vanessa," he said, surprised. "What are you doing here on a weekend?" "We need to talk," she said briskly. In the study, Maya could hear the voices rise and fall behind closed doors. "You've been skipping meetings, ignoring investors, turning down press. The board's concerned." "I'm not ignoring anyone," Alexander replied evenly. "I'm reprioritizing," Vanessa's tone sharpened. "By playing house with your nanny?" Maya froze in the hallway. Inside, Alexander's chair scraped against the floor. "Watch your tone." "You're not yourself," Vanessa pressed. "The Alexander I know would never let emotion cloud judgment." He stood. "Maybe that version of me wasn't built to last." Vanessa's lips thinned. "You'll lose the board's confidence. Then maybe they're not the right board." That night, the house was quieter than usual. The boys were asleep. Maya sat on the back porch, sipping chamomile tea beneath strings of soft light. Alexander stepped outside, still carrying the day's tension in his shoulders. "She's right. You know," he said, sitting beside her. Maya didn't look up. "Vanessa! She thinks I'm throwing away everything I've built." "And are you?" He took a deep breath. "No, I'm realizing I built it wrong. I built a future but forgot to live in the present." She nodded. "There's no substitute for presence." He looked at her. "I used to think being a father meant being perfect. Turns out it just means being there." Maya smiled faintly. "That's the first truth every parent learns too late." He studied her, his voice softening. "You've done that, haven't you? Sat with your pain until it turned into something else." She hesitated. "My little brother, Isaiah. Cancer took him when he was 9. I was 15. Alexander's expression softened. "I'm sorry," she nodded slowly. "My parents couldn't even say his name for years. But I talked to him every night. I still do sometimes. It helped. Why? Because people don't fall apart when they're seen," she said quietly. "They heal." He looked at her for a long time, then whispered, "And you help people see again." Maya smiled faintly. "Maybe, but healing's never easy." The next morning, Ben and Theo ran into the garden, sunlight spilling across the grass. Maya followed with a picnic blanket while Alexander carried the food. As they spread out sandwiches and juice boxes, Theo tugged on his father's sleeve. "Daddy, do you think Mommy sent Miss Maya to us?" Alexander looked at Maya. She stood nearby, watching the boys chase a butterfly, her laughter soft and effortless. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I think Mommy would be glad she's here." Theo smiled. "Do you think she'll stay forever?" Alexander's gaze met Maya's again. He didn't look away. "I hope she stays as long as her heart tells her to." That Sunday, the air in the house felt different, too still. The boys were quiet, their energy subdued. "Something's off," Maya said softly, as she washed the breakfast dishes. Alexander nodded. They've been tense since yesterday. Before either could say more, the mail arrived. A white envelope with no return address. Inside, a letter written in elegant cursive from Claudia Bennett, Emily's estranged sister. She wanted to see the boys. She claimed Emily had certain wishes before she passed, about guardianship and family legacy. Maya read the letter once and saw the threat buried between the lines. "She wants something," she said carefully. "She wants control," Alexander muttered. After ignoring her sister's funeral, now she appears because the family looks happy again. "Maybe she's changed," Maya offered. He shook his head. "Or maybe she smells opportunity." Later, Maya found Ben hiding under the piano bench, wrapped in a blanket. "Hey, love bug," she whispered, crouching beside him. "You hiding?" He nodded. "Is that lady going to take us away?" Maya's chest tightened. "Who told you that?" "I heard Daddy on the phone. He said someone Mommy didn't like wants to see us." She pulled him close. "No one is taking you anywhere. You're safe here, with your dad, with me." "Then why's Daddy mad?" Ben asked. "Because grown-ups get scared too," Maya said gently. "But fear doesn't mean you're not safe. Can we still talk to Mommy?" "Especially when things feel scary," she whispered. That night, Alexander stood silently at the boys' door, listening to her read. The twins clung to her, comfort in the shape of a bedtime story. When she stepped out, he followed her into the hall. "I heard what Ben said," he murmured. "I didn't want them to know yet." "Children always know," Maya said. "They feel what we try to hide," he rubbed his forehead. "If she pushes for custody, I'll fight it." "You'll win," Maya replied. "Not because of lawyers, because of love. No court can measure what lives in this house." He looked at her, eyes heavy but steady. "Do you think we're strong enough?" "Yes," she said, "but not if you fight alone." 2 days later, Claudia arrived without warning. She was poised, expensive, and cold. Her tone dripped with control. "I assume you're the nanny," she said to Maya. "I'm Maya," she replied calmly. "I care for the boys." "Of course." Claudia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Alexander entered, posture rigid. "You should have called." "I didn't think I needed permission to visit my sister's children," Claudia said smoothly. "You forfeited that right years ago." "I made mistakes," she countered, "but I want to make them right." "Funny," Alexander said, "considering you skipped the funeral. I was grieving in my own way. You're not here to mourn. You're here to disrupt." Claudia's eyes flicked toward Maya. "And you think she's the stable influence?" Maya didn't flinch. "I'm not replacing anyone. I'm here because they love me, and I love them." Claudia's jaw tightened. "Then I'll see you in court." She left as abruptly as she'd arrived, perfume fading into the silence. Alexander stared after her, unmoving. Maya stepped closer. "So it begins," she said quietly. He exhaled. "Yes, but we're not fighting against her, Maya." He looked toward the boys' room upstairs. "We're fighting for them." The days that followed Claudia's visit carried the tension of a storm that hadn't yet broken. The house, once filled with laughter, seemed to hold its breath. Alexander's study filled with legal papers and sleepless hours. Maya moved quietly through the hallways, holding the fragile rhythm of routine together for the boys. Theo clung to her leg more often, while Ben asked questions that carried fear beneath their innocence. "Are we still a family? What if someone takes you away?" Maya never lied. She simply knelt, met their eyes and said, "No matter what happens, love doesn't move out of a house. It stays." At night, when she tucked them in, Theo whispered, "If we pray really hard, can we make her go away?" Maya's throat tightened. "Prayers don't make people disappear, sweetheart. They help us stay kind and brave." Ben frowned. "But she's not kind." "Then we'll be kind enough for her," Maya said gently. "Because kindness is how we keep peace alive." Theo's small voice trembled. "You're what's good." The words hit her harder than she expected. She brushed his hair from his forehead and whispered, "And you two are my reason to be brave." 2 mornings later, Alexander stood in the kitchen, clutching a thick manila envelope. Inside, a subpoena. Claudia had filed for partial custody. Maya set down the teapot slowly. "What does she have?" "Claims Emily made verbal wishes," Alexander said, voice tight. "It's hearsay, but it's enough for a court date." He stared at the coffee pot as it filled, his face pale from exhaustion. "I don't know how to tell the boys," he muttered. Maya stepped closer. "Then don't start with fear. Start with what won't change." He looked at her. "Like what?" "That they're loved. That this is home. That no judge in the world can rewrite that." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he nodded quietly, as if absorbing courage through her words. That afternoon the family gathered in the den. Alexander sat with the twins on the rug, Maya beside them. "Remember the woman who came to visit?" Alexander began gently. "Her name's Claudia, Mommy's sister." The boys nodded, wide-eyed. "She wants to see you again," he continued. "And some people will have a big, serious talk about that. But you should know something important." He looked around the room, at the walls that had once felt too large for one heart and were now full of laughter and life. "This is your home. You belong here, always." Ben glanced up. "And Miss Maya?" Maya smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." Theo leaned against her. "Even if they say you have to." "I don't need their permission to love you," she said softly. Alexander's throat closed. He placed his hand over hers, the gesture quiet but sure. In that moment, the 4 of them didn't just look like a family, they felt like one. Days blurred into nights filled with preparation. Alexander met with lawyers. Caroline, his sister, came to help with the boys. Maya wrote and rewrote a letter, a character statement requested by the attorney. It wasn't just legal defense. It was testimony from the heart. "They are not simply children I care for. They are my compass, my peace. I show up not for pay, but because love led me here when they needed someone, and I needed something to believe in again." She signed it, hands trembling. The morning of the hearing arrived grey and cold. The courthouse air smelled faintly of paper and nerves. Alexander wore a charcoal suit. Maya, a simple cream dress, her hair tied back. Claudia arrived in pearls, her posture perfect, her gaze sharp. Judge Renata Hall presided, composed, firm, with a warmth hidden beneath her professionalism. Claudia's attorney spoke first. Biological rights, legacy, family intention. Then Alexander stood. His voice was steady, low, full of conviction earned through pain. "I won't pretend I've done everything right," he began. "I grieved badly. I got angry, but I've never stopped showing up for my sons. They are thriving, not because I'm perfect, but because our home is full of love." He glanced toward Maya. "And not just from me." The courtroom quieted. When Maya was called, her voice trembled only once. "I've seen these boys grow from grief into light," she said. "They still pray for their mother, but now they do it without fear. Love raised them, not blood, not money. Love." Judge Hall studied her for a long moment. Then she turned her gaze to Claudia. "Miss Bennet, your concerns are noted," she said, tone firm but kind. "But this court does not uproot children who are thriving. Custody remains with Mr. Reed." The gavel struck. For the first time in weeks, Alexander exhaled. That night the house glowed faintly beneath the snow. The boys were asleep before dinner. Exhaustion and relief weighed heavy in every breath. Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Maya on the back porch. The air was cold but peaceful. Snowflakes drifted like confetti in slow motion. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "You don't have to," Maya replied. "We were in this together." He raised his glass. "Two together." She clinked hers lightly against his. "To peace." For a moment neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence was full of gratitude, of relief, of a quiet kind of love that didn't need naming yet. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. Ben and Theo were sprawled on the living room floor, building a massive Lego fortress. Alexander stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching. His shoulders no longer carried armor. He looked lighter, realer. Maya joined him, a stack of folded laundry in her arms. "You look like someone who finally believes the house won't fall," she teased. He smiled. "For the first time, I know it won't." Downstairs, Caroline packed her bags. Before leaving, she turned to Maya. "You saved them," she said softly. "All three of them." Maya shook her head. "He saved himself. I just held the light." Caroline smiled faintly. "Maybe, but not everyone's brave enough to hold light for someone else." That night, when the boys were asleep, Alexander sat beside Maya on the couch, firelight flickering across their faces. "You know," he said, "I always thought love had to be earned. Now I know it just has to be shown." She turned to him. "You've learned fast," he smiled faintly. "Good teacher," she chuckled softly, then fell quiet. The moment stretched, gentle but full. "Do you ever think about us?" he asked quietly. Maya didn't look away. "Sometimes, but I think about the boys more, about how fragile they still are." He nodded. "I'm not asking for promises, just possibility." Her voice softened. "Then I can give you that." Winter melted slowly into spring, and with it came the quiet rebirth of the Reed family. The house that once echoed with grief now hummed with the soft rhythm of belonging. Every morning began the same, laughter spilling down the staircase, the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls drifting through the halls, and Maya's familiar humming, gentle, steady, alive. One day Alexander found her in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, flour dusting her cheek. He leaned on the doorway, watching her move. "You hum when you're at peace," he said softly. She smiled. "Not always. Sometimes I hum to find peace." He nodded. "Seems to be working." A quiet moment hung between them. Then he said almost shyly, "You ever think about what comes next for you?" Maya wiped her hands, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You've taken care of everyone else. Maybe it's time to build something of your own." She tilted her head. "Like what?" "Like your own daycare. Or learning center. That old carriage house on the edge of the property. It's empty. We could turn it into something beautiful." Her breath caught. "You'd help me do that?" "I'd help you build it," he said simply. "You've given this family a second life. You deserve to see your dream take root too." She didn't answer right away, but her eyes glistened. "Then maybe it's time." By April, construction began. The dusty carriage house transformed, sunlight pouring through new windows, walls painted soft earth tones, the scent of sawdust mingling with fresh blooms from the garden. They called it the garden room, a place for children who needed safety and parents who needed hope. On opening day, Maya stood before a small crowd of friends, neighbors, and family. Ben and Theo wore tiny bow ties. Alexander stood behind them, quiet pride in his eyes. Maya cleared her throat. "I built this place for little hands and big dreams," she said. "For anyone still learning how to be whole. We plant seeds of kindness here, and we water them with faith." She bowed her head briefly, whispering a prayer that wasn't about religion, but gratitude. Then the doors opened, and laughter poured in. Ben and Theo dashed inside first, exploring the reading corner by the windows. Alexander watched from a distance, his chest tight with emotion he didn't have a name for. Later, as the guests trickled out, he found Maya under the cherry blossom tree. "I've never been more proud," he said quietly. She smiled. "Neither have I." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small box. Not a ring, but a silver locket. Inside was a picture of the four of them laughing at the kitchen table. "For everything you are," he said, "and everything we still get to become." Her eyes shimmered. "You have a way of ruining my makeup, Mr. Reed." He laughed softly. "I'll buy you more mascara." Summer arrived with open skies and children's laughter. The boys chased fireflies through the garden, their giggles echoing through twilight. Maya sat beneath the oak tree journaling. The air was warm, alive. Alexander joined her, 2 glasses of lemonade in hand. "Do you ever think," he asked, "about how far we've come?" She looked up, smiling. "Every day." They watched as Ben built a makeshift rocket from cardboard boxes, Theo directing with serious instructions. "You've changed them," Alexander said quietly. Maya shook her head. "No, Alexander, they changed us." He was silent for a long time. Then, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've been thinking about what forever might look like." Her heart stilled. "Forever?" He nodded. "Not a promise, not a rush. Just a vision. You, me, the boys, this life we built." She smiled, soft and knowing. "Forever sounds like a prayer to me." He leaned closer, forehead resting gently against hers. "Then let's keep praying." Weeks passed in harmony. Theo learned to play the violin, badly but with enthusiasm. Ben started sketching everything he loved, trees, birds, Maya smiling. One afternoon, Maya found a drawing tucked into her purse. It showed her kneeling beside the twins, sunlight behind her head like a halo. She showed it to Alexander that evening. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. That night, as she tucked the boys in, Theo asked sleepily, "Can we pray for people we don't know?" "Of course," Maya said. "Even if we never meet them?" "That's the best kind of prayer," she whispered. When they'd fallen asleep, Alexander stood beside her in the hallway. "You've changed this house," he said softly. "It breathes again." She looked at him, her voice low. "I didn't change it. I reminded it what love sounds like." Late summer brought one final moment of grace. While sorting through old boxes, Alexander found a letter sealed in Emily's handwriting. It was dated a week before she passed. He read it aloud to Maya in the kitchen, voice shaking. "If you're reading this, Alex, I'm gone. Don't let our boys grow up without knowing joy. Find it again. And if someone kind knocks on your door, don't push her away." Alexander's voice cracked on the last line. He handed the letter to Maya, eyes wet. "She saw you," Maya whispered. He nodded. "Before I ever did." By autumn, the garden room thrived. Laughter filled the space daily. Families found healing where once there had been silence. Ben drew a new picture for its wall, a family under a blossoming tree, hands linked. At dinner that evening, candles flickered as twilight painted the sky. "I'm thankful," Alexander said quietly, "for second chances." Maya smiled. "I'm thankful for answered prayers," Ben grinned. "I'm thankful for stories," Theo added. "And Miss Maya's pancakes." They laughed, and in that laughter, something sacred lived, something born from brokenness and rebuilt with love. That night, after the boys were asleep, Maya stood by the window. The moonlight pooled over her journal as she wrote, "Healing doesn't come in lightning strikes. It comes in whispers, in burnt pancakes, bedtime stories, and second chances." Behind her, Alexander's voice was soft. "You once told me broken things can still be beautiful. I finally believe you." Maya turned, smiling through tears. "Good, because this house, this family, it's the proof." He stepped closer, their hands finding each other naturally. Outside, the wind stirred through the trees, carrying laughter, prayer, and the promise of tomorrow. No grand endings, just peace. The quiet, lasting kind that says, "Love stayed." And that's how a house built on silence learned to speak again. Not through grand miracles, but through small, quiet acts of love. Alexander found peace, Maya found purpose, and those 2 little boys found home. Maybe that's the truth we all forget. Healing doesn't happen fast, but it does happen when love stays. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments. What moment hit your heart the hardest? I read every single one, and if you believe second chances deserve to be seen, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs hope today.